Welcome in, everyone. Another edition of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Here we are, week number 12. Only 1 week left in the regular season. Hard to believe, but not hard to believe was a phenomenal weekend by Mr. Humans last week here on the podcast.
I've had a lot of mediocre weeks. It
Nah.
was great to finally have a big week, and things fell into place, and no bad beats to complain about, nothing like that, Tim. So
I need a soundboard here with the Mike Breen bang. Ole Miss, Navy, Purdue, and a little on the money line. Auburn, Hawaii, Arizona, and I believe the quote from you was, "If I bet Arizona and lose again, I'm going to punch myself in the face."
didn't have to do that.
Didn't have to do that. An outright win over UCLA. Your only loser, Mississippi State. 4-2 for me, and of course, as I show you, ECU, a nice line through it as that came home. Good call, Tim, to cross that out. But Auburn, UConn, Texas Tech, and Arizona, my two losers. Texas on that money line parlay. Thank you, Steve Sarkisian, and Wake Forest lost outright. Terrible pick by Sam Hartman late in that game. So a good weekend for us. A terrible weekend for the Pac-12, Matt, as they went from 3 possible playoff teams to 1. It's what they do every year. It's a tradition unlike any other.
Well, you're going to beat each other up in conference, and the Big Ten is essentially got 3 teams that have, sometimes 4 when Wisconsin's in the mix, have a chance to be a playoff team. And the Big Ten's going to get 1 because I would assume the Michigan-Ohio State game's got to be an elimination game. And the Pac-12, I was hyped up. I thought this was going to be a great weekend. We got Utah, Oregon, UCLA, USC. How great would this, semifinal type of format have been for the Pac-12? And the Bruins and Ducks blow it last week, and now Bo Nix is out for the Ducks this week, and the Pac-12, not the same amount of hype. There's a decent debate. I hate the college football playoff debates at this stage, but a decent debate about who should be the 4th team in if USC wins out and wins the Pac-12. A lot of people ripping USC's schedule strength. Hey, check out Michigan's schedule strength. Check out Ohio State's schedule strength. Nobody talks about stuff like that. Look at the SEC this week. The entire league is playing 1AA opponents, essentially, Tim. So you got plenty of weak spots on all these teams' schedules. I think USC's schedule's been strong enough. If the Trojans do run the table, let's say, the rest of the way, if they win out and all they have on their resume is a 1-point loss at Utah, I think USC's got a strong case to be the 4th team.
And we're going to get to USC and UCLA here in a moment, but just to kind of put a bow on that, as much as I despise the Trojans, if they win out, they're in. Their 3 hardest games are now. UCLA on the road, home to Notre Dame. You can scoff all you want. The College Football Playoff Committee has Notre Dame 18th. And then a neutral site against the winner of Oregon, Utah, essentially. So
right here in Vegas.
So that'll be it. I don't think they'll do it. Maybe they get tripped up this weekend, and that's where we'll start with the main course. All right, Matt, let's head to the Rose Bowl. One of the cooler traditions in college football is when these two teams get together, both teams wear their home uniforms. It'll be in the Rose Bowl. It will be sold out, which is certainly a rarity. When you looked at the Bowling Green game earlier this year, I think there were 14 people in the seats. USC at UCLA, this will be 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And this number has kind of intrigued me here because as we sit right now, Matt, at Circa on Thursday afternoon as we record, this game opened 4 on Sunday. Make sure you check out Lines Revealed with JVT, by the way, each and every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And it quickly got down to 2.5 within a half hour. And it pretty much stayed there. And across the board, it's mostly 2.5. But earlier today here on Thursday, it got to 3 in favor of the Trojans. So it looks like a little Trojan buyback. So how do you break this game down on Saturday night? And do you have a play in this game?
I do. I actually was on the college lines show with JVT on Sunday morning. And I said, I made this USC -1. And I was surprised that Circa opened 4. I got UCLA plus 3.5. But for the purposes of this podcast, any plays I put out this week, it's UCLA plus 3. That's the number right now at Circa. And that's the best number in the market is 3. I think the Bruins' running attack is going to be too much for the USC defense over the course of 4 quarters. Zach Charbonnet, the transfer from Michigan, has been outstanding. I just think I had the number here. Charbonnet, 24 carries, 181 yards last week, and that loss to Arizona. But he's done that, something like that, almost every week. The more you watch Charbonnet, the more you have to like him. And I think this DTR Charbonnet rushing attack is going to be a lot of trouble for the USC defense. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson with 20 TD passes, 14 picks, has been really efficient this season in terms of not making the critical turnovers he'd made in the past. So I like Chip Kelly's offense to be able to run on USC, move the chains, control the clock, and really USC tries to be a fast-paced, they want to run a lot of plays, faster-paced offense. But, Tim, you got to wonder if how well that's going to work this week with Travis Dye out. Mm-hmm. So Trojans' top running back, Dye, the transfer from Oregon, 884 yards on the season, 6.1 per carry. He's done. And Caleb Williams, and obviously the backup running backs are not bad, but Travis Dye and Caleb Williams had a dynamic there. And Caleb Williams, 31 TD passes, 2 picks. These teams, to me, it's basically a coin flip game. And the fact that there's a sellout crowd at the Rose Bowl is great. That's my favorite venue in college football. I love to go there to catch games, and usually there's plenty of good seats available. That's not the case this week. I think the Bruins, off that loss, get refocused here after they got stunned at home by Arizona a week ago. And, USC's defense is vulnerable on the ground. Last year, the Bruins dropped a 62-point bomb on this team. So Chip Kelly knows how to attack this defense. USC barely got by Arizona and Cal in recent games too. I don't think the Trojans are playing their best football right now, Tim. This total's dropped from 82 to 75. I'll take the 3 with the Bruins. Now, it's going to be a shootout here, and I don't think the 3 points is as valuable as it might be in a game, in a Wisconsin-Iowa type of game where the total's 35 or something. But I'll take the 3 because you never know what it might come down here to. But I like the Bruins to win the game too.
I like UCLA. I'm with you. I took 3. I don't know if it'll be official best bet for me, but it is one for Matt. So he went 6-1 last week, so you trust him. But the one thing that kind of bugs me and has nothing to do with stats, UCLA is running their mouth this week, and I don't.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson said that they want to break 60 points against USC, and then their safety, Mo Isling, said, quote, "We know we're going to replicate it next week, so we're going to have a little bit of fire underneath our butts. Go out there and just put it on display." I mean, you just lost to Arizona, so
you need to shut up.
I don't know if you need to be talking trash against the team in USC while they are 9-1, and you scored 60 against them last year. So I don't love that. I'll say this about UCLA. Their schedule to this point in the conference has been far more difficult. They've played Washington, Utah, Oregon. They went 2-1 over those 3 games. Obviously, they lost to Arizona, but USC has only played one of those teams, and it was Utah. Good game, but they lost that game. So they haven't really been tested all that much. They played Oregon State on the road. You and I had that game pegged. The Beavers really, I thought, should have won that game. Yeah. And ultimately, Oregon State did cover. So, one thing you mentioned about the rushing defense for USC, allowing 4.46 yards per carry. So that is not great, and we'll see. But I do think...
And have not even faced a lot of really good rushing offenses either. And I think that's got to be the thing that concerns you the most, even if you look inside that number. They haven't faced a team that can run the ball like UCLA can run it. Utah is about the only opponent that the Trojans have faced who can run it like the Bruins. And Utah wore down that USC defense in the second half and scored on almost every series, Tim. So, yeah, I think that'll be the difference.
Yeah, and Travis Dye being out, I know they've got a host of other running backs. Of them, Austin Jones is pretty talented, but I think Travis Dye brings a whole lot to this team that his loss is going to be significant. And if they don't lose this weekend, I have a hard time envisioning USC going unblemished the remainder of the way. And I do think they could certainly stub their toe here. So that game at 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox, the late night game.
The game of the week.
And the game we enjoy, Utah at Oregon.
Okay.
Are you talking about Hawaii? I wasn't jumping there already.
No, I think USC UCLA is the game of the week.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
It's unfortunate the Bruins blew that game to Arizona last week. But, it's also unfortunate in this Utah-Oregon game that Bo Nix looks like he's going to be out for the Ducks. And, Tim, I had to get off my bet this week. I played Oregon -3. And last night when I got word by text from a good source that Nix is going to be out, I had to play Utah +3. And that's it. Yeah. I'm off the game.
Yeah.
And, and the one thing I liked about Oregon in this spot is I didn't think the Ducks were going to lose back-to-back home games. They're 23-1 in their previous 24 home games. The Utes have not been very good on the road this season, and I thought this was a good spot for the Ducks to bounce back. But without Bo Nix, it's all on Ty Thompson, who's a highly touted recruit, a 5-star guy, but you just don't know what you're going to get from him in a game like this.
Yeah, and once again, it's not official, but you can kind of read. Well, first off, you look at the line. The line's telling you the story. The line moved 6 points from last night, which was Wednesday, to Thursday, a 6-point move. So I got a similar text message. I took the 3 as well with Utah plus the 3. It's funny, with Bo Nix playing, Matt, I kind of looked at this game one way or the other. And I saw that, you gave out Oregon with Mitch and Paul on VSiN early in the week. So that made me think a little bit more because, was this a buy low spot on Oregon?
It looked like it.
Because initially I'm like, oh, I like Utah here, the physicality, but then the things that you hit on, they've struggled on the road, and it felt like a buy low opportunity for Oregon. So, yeah, really tricky spot for Oregon now. And it looks like if this plays out, Matt, the way it seems, if the odds are correct, it'll be Utah here in Las Vegas in 2 weeks because they wrap up the regular season on the road at Colorado. So a tough one there. Oregon, let me ask you this, though. Now it's at 3. Could you be convinced, or could you take a nibble on Oregon, or is this just a complete pass because Bo Nix is out?
No, you don't have to make pregame bets here. And I think that's what some people have to kind of change their mindset about things like this. I was able just to get off my position on the game, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch it. I'm going to evaluate Thompson as the quarterback and live bet the game if I feel like there's an opportunity to jump in somewhere. There's plenty of games on Saturday. You don't have to bet them all. But if I see something here that I say, hey, Thompson's going to be fine, then I'll go ahead and bet the Ducks live. But no, I don't really feel like doing that at this point because you just don't know what you're going to get from a player like that.
10:30 Eastern, a bit of a bummer there. Oregon, that crowd will be phenomenal, no doubt about it.
I wouldn't write the Ducks off.
No, I wouldn't
like
either.
You say, yeah.
I mean, once again, it's 3. It's not 20. It's still a coin toss of a game. But Oregon and Utah, some wind out of the sail with the likelihood, at least per the betting market. And you could have read, some of the players, I think, said next man up, earlier in the week. It was like, oh, he's not going to play. All right, let's get to a game at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. local, down in Waco, Texas. And it's the Teflon TCU Horned Frogs. How many times can I bet against them and be wrong? It's now 3 in a row. I lost to Kansas State. It's funny because, Matt, I actually started betting on TCU. I bet on them when they played Kansas.
Right.
When everyone was on Kansas, I got the 6.5. They covered. They won by 7. And, that game, you see Daniels go out. Jason Bean comes in, and TCU is able to win. And we've kind of said the same exact thing each and every week when it comes to a TCU game. And now it feels like, and I'm curious your thoughts, that people have just kind of conceded, said, you know what? TCU is just going to get it done. And you can't think that way, folks. But I'm going to get to my handicap here in just a moment. But how do you look at this game? TCU, you can still get Baylor +3 if you like the Bears. Mostly 2.5 if you do like the road favorite here in TCU.
I think Baylor's probably the right side here. And I know that a lot of guys have been betting against TCU. We shouldn't say guys and gals. A lot of people have been betting against TCU every week. Not just you, Tim. There's a lot of people trying to fade the Frogs, and it hasn't worked out so well. But I think this is a week where you can fade the Frogs and probably cash a ticket. I kind of like this spot. And TCU's capitalized on a lot of situations where they've faced backup quarterbacks. The schedule's kind of been breaking the right way for the Frogs, but you have to give them full credit for what they did in Austin, Texas last week. Sharps were all over the Longhorns, laying 7, betting it to 7.5. TCU goes in there and completely shuts down the Texas offense to where Quinn Ewers was 17 for 39 passing. But I think Dave Aranda is going to have a good plan this week. Baylor in a pretty good spot as a home dog. And you just read the betting market here. I hate to use that word trap, but if you're looking at an undefeated team on the road as a 2.5-point favorite against a team that just got blown out, take the team that just got blown out. That's a home dog. I think Baylor Bears are going to step up big here.
We talked about it a couple weeks ago, and we've talked about it more so on the show. Remember when Notre Dame and BYU, and the line was 3.5. Notre Dame was a 3.5-point favorite. And what was that telling you? It was telling you the favorite's probably the right side. And it was. Now, this is not everything's always going to play this way. Folks, teams that are laying 2.5 cover all the time. But I think the betting market is telling you something. Why is this game mostly 2.5 except for our friends over at the South Point?
Right.
And, you look at, as you kind of hit on, this Baylor team loses 31-3. Blake Shapen played really poorly in that spot. They've been Jekyll and Hyde, Baylor has been this year, up and down, right? They've lost to BYU, lose to West Virginia, but then they also won and covered 3 straight games. Kansas, Texas Tech, they smoked Texas Tech. They beat them by 4 touchdowns, and they beat Oklahoma too. As you mentioned, Dave Aranda, I think he's a tremendous coach. I don't think the talent level is oozing out for TCU, and it's not the same for Baylor here. And I think there's a little revenge on the mind. Last year, 7-1 Baylor went to Fort Worth the week after Gary Patterson was fired, and a 3-5 TCU team beat Baylor 30-28. I think they get revenge. An official play for me on the pod is Baylor plus the 3. I think this is the spot. Sonny Dykes even alluded to it this week a little bit, Matt, where, this is going to be their 9th consecutive game. And every week they've had to get up. And I know I've been saying it. Letdown spot here, letdown spot there. But you just went to Texas, faced your old coach, Gary Patterson. College game day was there, and you flexed on the big bad wolf in that state in Texas, and you shut down Bijan Robinson to have less than 30 yards. And now you got to turn around and go on the road, 11 a.m. local kick against Baylor. Good luck. If you get it done, I'm not saying TCU's not worthy of their ranking right now, and if they go undefeated, but I'm on Baylor, plus the 3 here in this spot.
Well, I go back to the Kansas State game, and I was
down 28-10.
I was on K-State in that game getting the points, and we had a 28-10 lead, and K-State's top 2 quarterbacks get knocked out. The third stringer comes in, throws a pick on his first pass attempt. The entire game swings TCU's way. I think the Frogs have been on kind of a lucky roll here. I don't want to take anything away from them because sometimes teams just get on a roll like that, and it happens. Your season gets defined by that. Think of the Las Vegas Raiders last year. They won a lot of close games. They won staged a lot of comebacks. They end up being a 10-win team that goes to the playoffs. Guess what? A close game regression has hit this year. Some seasons, it just you maintain that luck and you continue that roll. So it's not going to stun me if TCU wins that game, but I think you try to read the betting market too here, and it's telling me that Baylor is probably the right side.
And once again, you look at
I do not, by the way, I don't have a play on it yet, so I don't want to go on the record, but I'm leaning that direction. Let's put that one.
VSiN.com right now, and I'll just mention this. 2 weeks ago, Chris Andrews came on my show, VSiN Primetime, and said it was 9-1 ticket count on TCU over Texas Tech. By the way, TCU was losing going into the fourth quarter, just a reminder. They win, they cover. Last week, John Murray on Saturday morning, Westgate Superbook, 72% of the tickets on TCU. Public's been loving the Horned Frogs. VSiN.com right now on Thursday, 91% of the bets
TCU
on TCU.
Well, last week the public got it right.
They did.
And the
last
Sharps,
2 weeks.
The Sharps got it wrong. Texas was a terrible bet last week, and the Sharps were all over the Longhorns.
On the podcast, man, I didn't even lay the points. I was like, I don't want to mess with the points. I'll just take them on the money line. And the money line really never had a shot.
They have a shot.
They were fortunate with a scoop and score. I mean, there was no flukiness about the TCU win last week. Let me reiterate
a lot of times,
that.
I want to point this out, too. A lot of times it sounds like on this network or just in this sports betting media space in general, people like to pick on the public. Like the public is not wrong all the time. No. And in fact, the Sharps have been wrong in a lot of games, a lot of big games this season. And we got to point out the Sharps have been dead wrong in a lot of Texas games, including last week.
Well, that is there's no doubt about it. And we'll get to Texas a little bit later on because I think they're on them again. They can't quit them. All right, final game here in the main course. You could put it in big boys with big spreads, but I think this is a really fascinating game and a game that you have a play on, and I might join you as well. Illinois last week, great call by you, loses outright to Purdue. And now they go on the road to Michigan, Matt. It's going to be frigidly cold in Ann Arbor. Mm-hmm. It's going to be frigid all across the Midwest. Noon kickoff, ABC, number 3 Michigan is laying 18 against Illinois. I'm curious to get your handicap because it feels like this is just, two teams that just want to run at each other, and that would seem to favor the dog.
Got to make sure that Illinois running back Chase Brown's going to play. He's got a leg injury. All indications are right now he's trending in the right direction to play in this game. Tim, a big part of this handicap for me is something you didn't mention. The running game's a big part of it, but the Illini are off 2 home losses in the favorites role. Now they're back in a role I think that's better suited for them, which is the big dog role. And the key to it all, who do the Wolverines have on deck?
That would be the team up north.
Right. So if you're
or
Jim
the team
Harbaugh.
Down south. Ohio State calls them the team up north. Whatever. They're playing Ohio State.
Ohio State next week. Columbus is south of Ann Arbor.
Sometimes, as I say in betting, you get too cute. I was trying to get too. I could have just said Ohio State, but I tried to get too cute.
This is going to be, it should be a classic Jim Harbaugh game where the Wolverines just grind it out, get a lead, sit on the lead, shut it down, and don't show anything because you've got Ohio State on deck. And that, to me, that's the key to the handicap. DraftKings has got 18 right now. I'll take the points with the Illini.
Something to keep an eye on, too, is Brett Bielema's mother passed away on Thursday, so no decision yet whether or not Brett Bielema will be coaching the game on Saturday. So another thing to keep an eye on. Chase Brown, as you alluded to. But, yeah, I think this is a spot. You look at the year so far, right? They lose that game to Indiana. You scratch your head. You're like, what the hell was that?
Well, Brett Bielema mismanaged that game, and also the Illini turnovers. I'd say the officiating didn't help, but Bielema mismanaged. There was a lot of mistakes in that game that really hurt the Illini.
But then they go to Wisconsin. They thump Wisconsin. So, yeah, I'm with you. I took the 18 as well. So, Illinois at Michigan, noon on ABC. And that'll wrap up the main course. Let's get to those spicy matchups. I know you love spicy food, Matt.
I do.
You a Chinese food guy? Not
once
so
a
much.
month.
Yeah, not so much. All right. Once a month's probably more than me, too. This could have been off the radar. I threw it in spicy matchups. Navy at number 20 UCF. Oh, by the way, note the start time here. 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. So note that if you're going to the window here. ESPN2 for this game. One thing to keep an eye on is the health of the quarterback. Xavier Arline went down with an ankle injury against Notre Dame late in that one. And we talked about Notre Dame and Navy last week, and you took the 17, was it 17? 17
with Navy? 17.
17 with Navy.
And it was not looking good at halftime because I was very discouraged by the way the midshipmen played. But wow, how about that clumsy performance by the Irish in the second half?
12 yards, I think it was, in the second half. Is that good? You want 12 yards of offense? Credit Brian Newberry. He went out and just blitzed the hell out of Drew Pine, and they couldn't do anything in the second half. So here you have Navy playing another team in a letdown spot. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame just beat Clemson a week prior, got to go on the road or a neutral site and play Navy. And like you said, they were up 35-13 and then just kind of took the foot off the gas and Navy punched them in the mouth. And if that game's 62 minutes long, they might win that game, Navy, outright. UCF just beats Tulane, and now they're in the driver's seat to not only go to the AAC championship, but to host the AAC championship at the Bounce House. Early start game. I can't imagine the crowd is going to be totally geeked up into a 11 a.m. local start time there. It does worry me that UCF has the ability to throw the ball pretty well, and that's the biggest issue for Navy.
Sure.
But if I can get 16.5 with Navy here in this spot, I'm going to take the Mids. I do think they're playing better football despite their record, being what it is. I saw Wes Reynolds on vsin.com say he took the first half and full game. He split a unit. So, maybe that's the way to go. But I'm going to go ahead and take the points with Navy here. We see this team. They never quit. And they seem to have found something here offensively. I thought they had found it with Ty Lavatai. He goes down with an injury. But I'll tell you this. They had some of those long, sustained drives. They started the second half, Matt, with a 10-minute drive.
Yep.
And if you have 16.5 points, those are beauties. So I'm going to take the points here with the Mids on the road at UCF and maybe a little sleepy spot for the Golden Knights.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you. I lean Navy in this game, too. I think taking the big points with the midshipmen 2 weeks in a row is probably the way to go. It's not an official play for me. I've been thinking, if that number gets up to 17...
Looks like it's going the other way.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get to 17, but that's another case of if UCF scores early in the game, you live bet it. You can get a much better number with Navy. Sometimes when I'm leaning that way on a game, I won't play it pregame, and I'll just see if a better number pops up on live betting.
Similar with you with UCLA, I was able to get 17 at 16.5. If you want to buy up to 17, I'm not going to fight you for it, but I still think 16.5. is fine. All right, to that team that the Sharps love. They can't quit. The old Texas Longhorns with a mighty 6-4 record on the season there, Matt, and they are on the road at Kansas. And guess what? They're laying points because that's what happens when you are Texas this year. They are laying 9 against the Jayhawks in this spot here against Texas. It is a 3:30 local kick, total of 64. You can watch it on FS1. You riding with the Sharps? You laying it with Texas?
I'm not. I took 9 with Kansas, and when I was talking with JVT on the College Line show Sunday, I made this number 3.5, Tim.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, last week I made Texas 3 over TCU.
That was the right side.
7.5 was where that number came in.
Well, Kansas, by the way, beat them last year. Just pointing that out.
Okay, I was going to bring that up. What was the number in last year's game, Tim?
Oh, God.
31. Kansas was a 31-point dog and beat the Longhorns outright in Austin. That was 57-56. What you have in this matchup is a coaching advantage for the Jayhawks. It's pretty clear coaching advantage for Lance Leipold. Last time Jayhawks were at home, they beat Oklahoma State 37-16. You can look and say, well, they took a lopsided loss on the road last week to Texas Tech. The offense still produced 525 yards. Longhorns had a 5-game losing streak on the road before they won at Kansas State, and they kind of had to sweat out the fourth quarter of that one. I think that Quinn Ewers is in a little bit of a quarterback slump right now. Sark doesn't appear to have the answers, and I think this Texas team's been inflated. I've bet against Texas on a few occasions, and I think these numbers have been inflated, Tim. It's a 6-4 team. People are betting Texas like it's a playoff team every week. At some point, do you have to step back? At what point do you step back and say, hey, maybe Sark is not a very good coach? You think Arch Manning is starting to wonder about that too? I don't know. This guy is...
It's a great offensive mind. Seems to be a really good recruiter.
A lot of hype.
But
not a lot of substance.
We said it last week too. And I bought into it. I thought they would beat TCU, and they played poorly, very poorly in that spot. Still wondering if Jalen Daniels is going to be back. It looks like, I believe the latest was he's, quote, really, really close.
That'd be nice. Gives you 2 quarterbacks, but Beans played pretty well. Like I said, the offense is not the problem last week. 525 total yards.
Right, and that was a spot. I played Texas Tech last week. It was a clear Texas Tech is incredibly motivated. Mm-hmm. Kansas coming off the big win. Now you're back at home, and you've already kind of settled in. Hey, we've got a bowl game, but still, you're going to want to beat Texas.
Of course.
It's going to be a great atmosphere there in Lawrence.
Should we mention, Tim, that Kansas is 4-1-1 against the spread in its last 6 conference home games. I'm 5-0 ATS in the last 5 against Texas.
We should mention
that.
There we go. Kansas, official play for Matt, plus the 9. Another game, no play for me, but curious. You are a man who knows a thing or two about the Big Ten. And, hey, could I interest you in a game in the zeros? Iowa and Minnesota, Matt, going to head-to-head in the Twin Cities. A total right now on Thursday afternoon at Circa of 31 and a half.
Well, you've got a backup quarterback for the Gophers, and you've got really, really strong defenses on both sides. When I see a total that low, I'm inclined to bet over it because a lot of times you think you might get turnovers, maybe a defensive score, defenses get stops and set up short field position, things like that. It doesn't take much, Tim, to get over a total of 31, but with these teams, if you break down the box scores, you really wonder where the offense is going to come from. So I think scoring defense-wise, these are top 5 teams in college football. Minnesota 13.1 a game, Iowa 13.9. And if the Gophers are going to win this, it's going to be Mo Ibrahim. He had 36 carries, 178 yards last week, and I think Mo's going to have to be the guy to make that Gophers offense go. So it's not a game I'm really anxious to play right now, but I think based on the low total and the fact that the Minnesota quarterback's not going to be able to make many plays, I would probably lean to Iowa +3.
Yeah, we took Iowa last week on this podcast, and they handled business outright
against Whiskey.
Yeah, so that was a nice win. Did we not take it? I thought we took it. It's not on my list here.
I did not take it last week.
Let's get to another game, though, Matt, that I do have a play on, and that is in Fayetteville. Night game, Arkansas hosting number 14 Ole Miss. Last week, you had Ole Miss really never in doubt, and an opportunity late in that game for Ole Miss to win with the ball inside the 20-yard line. Jackson Dart gets sacked on 3rd down, and his 4th down throw is incomplete into the end zone. And Nick Saban cracks a smile, raises his hands, as did Matt Humans, as he knew there would be no backdoor cover for Alabama. So Alabama, Ole Miss covers, does not win, and this is the spot, in my opinion, to fade Ole Miss. There's so much effort from Lane Kiffin to beat his old boss. And I saw a video clip of him. I don't know if it was after the game or if it was in his, early week press conference. It looked like someone had, run over his dog. He was so bummed out. He said, I don't give a bleep about close games or covering the spread. We didn't win. And now you got to go to Arkansas and you got to play a pretty fired up Arkansas team. KJ Jefferson has practiced all week. He's expected to be back. That's a huge boom for this Razorback offense. And they're expected to have their tackle, Dalton Wagner, back. He was out last week against LSU. And here's the thing, right? People are going to look back to, this team lost to Liberty. They did. They were down 21-3 at the half. In the second half, Liberty did not score a point. And the last 6 quarters, they've played really good defense. They held LSU last week to, under 300 yards of offense.
Jaden Daniels was Superman previous to that, and he looked like Clark Kent against the Razorbacks.
And you're getting Sam Pittman you mentioned Brett Bielema as a dog. Mm-hmm. This is the role that Sam Pittman was built for, underdog. He is 13-6 ATS as an underdog. That includes a cover last week against LSU. And this game's going to be cold. Upper 20s, night game, first night game of the season. I think the crowd is going to be lit up. And Arkansas, this is a program, I think, too, that Matt doesn't take bowl games for granted. And I think this is a situation where they're 5-5. It's been a disappointing year. They lost to Liberty. But I think they're going to be pretty fired up to play this game senior night. I think Arkansas wins it on the field. I'll take the points. 2.5 is out there. If you can find a 3, go ahead and fire on that. But I'm going to take Arkansas on this spot. I think they take care of business against Ole Miss. Very, very small sample size. But Lane Kiffin, the last 2 years, you play Alabama, then you play Arkansas. 0-2 ATS in those 2 games following the Alabama loss.
Sure, it makes sense. So you put so much into the Bama game, and you're going to be a little emotionally flat. You might even be beat up physically after you play Bama.
And Arkansas is going to want to beat you up, too.
Seems to be the spot to play against Ole Miss. I am not going to play. I did play Arkansas last week plus 3.5, and I had to sweat that out.
Yeah. I was with you. We didn't give it out on the podcast, but we talked about it. I think both you and I liked Arkansas. Not official plays, but they did get there.
Razorbacks were not very effective offensively without KJ Jefferson at quarterback. And that concerns me a little bit in a matchup like this. I'm not sure if KJ Jefferson's going to play this week. Do you know?
He's practiced all week. And,
he practiced last week, too.
Pittman said he seems optimistic.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's part of my handicap. How
about that announcement last week?
Yeah.
I was on Arkansas plus 3.5 when you and I were doing the pod, and I was like, well, I better pull back on this play because it looks like KJ Jefferson might not play.
Right.
And then an hour before the game, it gets announced that he's not going to play. A flood of money comes in on LSU. The number jumps up to 5 at some spots, and the game lands on 3, 13-10. But it's just an offense without Jefferson that's not very good.
I agree.
I think he will play, though, and if you're going to bet Arkansas, you better hope he plays.
Yeah, I did bet Arkansas, and I'm hoping that he plays. Final one for me, and another one of those lines that makes you kind of scratch your head a little bit. Oklahoma State at Oklahoma. It's Bedlam. Might be the last time we see Bedlam. So you know that Mike Gundy and company is going to be up for this game. They're catching 7.5. Obviously, Oklahoma State has been incredibly banged up this year. Spencer Sanders said I'm playing, to paraphrase. He said he's going to go in this one. I don't have a bet on this game. I'm just kind of laughing inside that Oklahoma's laying 7.5 here in this spot.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to lean to the Cowboys. Did they get their act together last week with the late comeback to beat Iowa State 20-14? But the previous 2 games, Cowboys were outscored 85-16 and losses to K-State and Kansas. That was the worst 2-game stretch I think any team's had all season, Tim. At least a team that was ranked at some point, a team that was respected. How do you get blown out like that in back-to-back weeks? We see this with Mike Gundy a little bit too often. That's what I don't like about Gundy. We've also seen Gundy get completely dominated by the Sooners over the years, which should concern you a little bit here. But I think I probably lean to the dog and the points in a rivalry game like this. And it's not a play for me yet, but it's potential. It's got possibility for Saturday.
All right, let's get to a little because we got a lot of them, a lot of big spreads this week. A little big boys with big spreads. Yep. Matt, I don't know. I'm giving your alma mater a little credit here. I'm putting them in big boys with big spreads. Purdue coming off of their impressive win, and they are now in the driver's seat to play in the Big Ten championship.
Technically, now
Iowa has to lose, I think.
Iowa's got to lose a game because the tiebreaker in the Big Ten West is a head-to-head meeting. And if Iowa beats Minnesota and Nebraska, the Hawkeyes are going to be the team.
Oh, God.
But Iowa's an underdog this week, so I think you would say Purdue's got like a 55% chance to be the Big Ten.
And they play Northwestern and Indiana to wrap up the season. And I have a feeling I know where you're going to go. By the way, I think on this podcast in Purdue games, you're like 12-0 because you could read the market on your team here.
I'll double check.
But Purdue is laying 19.5 here against Northwestern. It's going to be cold as hell in West Lafayette. And
hell is hot, by the way. That's not a good analogy. You don't say cold as hell.
Cold as ice.
There you go.
Do you like the Boilermakers here, or are you going to take Pat's Cats in a big underdog role?
Pat Fitz is good in the dog role. He is. And Jeff Brom is not good in the favorites role. I've talked about this a lot of times. Purdue, by the way, this season, 0-4 ATS at home. One of the misconceptions right now is that Purdue can't run the ball. They've got this walk-on freshman, Devin Mockabee, who looks like the second coming of Mike Allstott. He's got 457 yards rushing in the last 4 games. It looks like it's going to be it's not going to be cold as hell, Tim, but it's going to be cold in West Lafayette.
I'll be honest. I've never been to hell, so hell could be cold. I mean, I
think it's a lot like Death Valley. It's going to be as windy as the Chicago lakefront. How about that?
There you go.
And on cold and windy days, the Purdue passing attack tends to stall a little bit. I think the Boilermakers are going to work on running the ball. I think Jeff Brom's going to try to establish a run with Mockabee. And this is going to keep the score down. I would anticipate you're going to see a low-scoring game. Evan Hull is really the only offensive weapon for the Purple Cats. They want to run the ball, too. This is going to be a boring game. If you're going to watch it, I don't think many people will be watching it, but I'll be watching because I took the 20 with the Purple Cats early in the week. I'll still say go ahead and grab the 19.5 that's out there. I expect that Purdue is going to get a lead, sit on it, and run the ball. Kind of like Michigan has an eye on Ohio State next week. Purdue has an eye on Indiana next week and trying to win the Big Ten West title. So you don't want to really risk anything. You want to get a lead, sit on it, and I think that's what Jeff Brom's going to do here. So, and also Pat Fitz has been really good in the dog role. Again, you have a coaching combination here of a coach who's a fragile favorite, a coach who's a dangerous dog, and that's Brom and Fitz. So I think a lot of things line up here to take the points with the Purple Cats.
I like the way you worked that play on words. Fragile favorite.
Dangerous dog.
Dangerous dog. I like that. All right, Purdue, an official play for you. We'll lump these two together in big boys with big spreads. Got the Ragin' Cajuns of UL Lafayette at Florida State, noon kickoff, 24-point spread in favor of the Noles. And then Florida at Vandy, noon kick, 14-point spread. This game fascinates me because it's a look-ahead spot for Florida to Florida State, but it's also a letdown spot for Vanderbilt, Matt, because they just won their first SEC game in the Clark Lee era, snapping a 26-game SEC losing streak. Clark Lee was, as you love, crying on the field talking to the reporter after the game. So anything intrigue you in the two Florida games, getting ready for a Black Friday showdown next week?
Well, Clark Lee's trying to build a premier program in the country at Vanderbilt.
Best.
So
I believe that is his quote, right?
A big win for him. No, I have no plays on these two games. I'll let you take it.
No, I'm passing. Okay. Would be intrigued to maybe Florida, but I'll pass. Notre Dame, ladies and gentlemen, 0-5 as a favorite of more than a touchdown ATS with two outright losses, Marshall and Stanford, but 5-0 as an underdog or a favorite of less than a touchdown. They are laying 3 touchdowns this weekend against Boston College, who actually won a football game last weekend.
Yeah,
they went on the road, beat NC State. Looks like they have the quarterback of their future, maybe, Emmett Moorhead, running around. He's pretty athletic dude. 3 touchdown passes, threw for 330. Notre Dame likely without their safety. Brandon Joseph, again, listed as doubtful. They will have their middle linebacker, J.D. Bertrand, who was missed sorely last week for the Irish, tracing the triple option. I couldn't lay 21. I could be intrigued in taking the points with BC. I'll just pass, but wouldn't blame anyone. I do wonder, Matt, is the trendiness of Notre Dame sucking as a big favorite starting to get out there? Because you look at some of the betting splits, and it looks like Boston College has taken a lot of bets. However, the opening line at Circa was 19, and it's sitting at 21 now.
Yeah, I think so. Irish, not the type of team, Tim, that you really want to bank on to cover big numbers either, because they can't make big plays in the passing game very often. So it's BC or pass for me here.
Yeah. All right, a couple more big dogs with big spreads. I think one that intrigues you. Georgia visiting Kentucky. You know, preseason, Matt, this was a game, can Kentucky get Georgia here? Could they win the SEC East? Yeah, not so much. They've kind of fallen apart here. Has Kentucky. Big Blue Nation losing to Vanderbilt last week. I don't know what's wrong with Will Levis, but it's a big spread for Georgia. Georgia has already clinched the SEC East. They're going to be playing LSU in the championship. They are kind of on cruise control here, laying 21.5 on the road. It is your 3:30 Eastern game on CBS. Could I intrigue you in Big Blue Nation here?
You can. And here's the deal. A lot of us, including me, were running to the window to bet Kentucky plus 11 or so, plus 13 against Tennessee on the road. And now you're catching 22 at home against Tennessee? I don't think there's
against Georgia.
Against Georgia, sorry. We were catching 13 on the opener against Tennessee. Number drops around 10.5, 11. Now we're catching 22 against Georgia. The thing is, in that Tennessee game, Will Levis was so bad, it was sickening. He passed for 98 yards in that game, Tim. And I think you got to see a much better effort here. By the way, Derek Rodriguez, since he's been back, he's been pretty effective on the ground. Last week, he had 162 yards. Previous week, 112. He's had a couple other games over 100 yards. So it's not a one-dimensional offense. I'm not sure why there's so much hype about Will Levis being a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. He's got 16 touchdowns, 9 picks. When you watch him play, it's just underwhelming. This is the type of game, though, where he could step up and make a statement. I also think Georgia, on back-to-back road games, could be a little bit flat in this spot. It's just a big number to cover on the road, and I think it's a decent spot for the Wildcats, who have kind of done a nice job of screwing up their season. They had high hopes, and they're 6-4. And this is kind of their last chance to really do something. Well, they got Louisville the following week, but I think a lot of people had high hopes for this Kentucky team. They started out 4-0, and it's been pretty much a mess since. I wouldn't be surprised if the Wildcats are competitive here. Tim, don't forget, Georgia went on the road and needed a late rally to beat Missouri.
Right.
And this is back-to-back road spots, so that's why I'm taking all the points here.
Couple big favorites on the road in the Big Ten, same time slot. Ohio State minus 27 at Maryland. Penn State minus 19 at Rutgers. I still have bad memories of taking 26.5 with the Scarlet Knights, and they led at halftime against Michigan and didn't get me the cover. Yeah. So no thanks to Greg Schiano and company. Ohio State look ahead to Michigan potentially. Anything here in the big spots, big numbers on the road with Ohio State and Penn State? I
think you always initially look to fade the Buckeyes and the Wolverines a week before they're going to play each other, right?
I have a stat for you. Would you like a stat?
Did you get it from Chris the Bear Felica, or did you come up with this on your own?
No, I took it from someone else. Colin Wilson tweeted this one out. Ohio State has covered twice since 2009, the week before Michigan. They covered last year. That's when they put up a 56 burger on Michigan State. But prior to that, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight non-covers. And they're laying almost 4 touchdowns here against the Terps.
Yeah, I think you have to look to the dog. I'm not saying you have to bet it, but it's dog or pass for me. And I decided to take the dog against Michigan. I have not bet the dog against Ohio State yet.
All right, 2 SEC games at night. Tennessee at South Carolina, and UAB, those Blazers, going down to Death Valley in a massive, you would think, letdown spot potentially. But the number now ticked up to 15. I know Wes Reynolds wrote up the Blazers here, and Tennessee against South Carolina is laying 21.5. So 2 pretty big favorites there at night in the SEC.
Yeah, I don't like to just say, well, take the dog in every game, because I do play a few favorites, but I'm not playing these favorites either. Because I think you've got distracted favorites, right, in these spots. Tennessee's got much bigger fish to fry, as Jim Harbaugh likes to say. And then LSU's had just off a monster few weeks. Really a monster month when you think about it. You go back to the trip that the Tigers made to Gainesville when Jaden Daniels started that big run and that 45-35 win at Florida. I think this is kind of like the week to exhale and let off the gas. And I would be very reluctant to lay the points here with LSU, and a little less reluctant to lay them with Tennessee. But I don't think either the Vols or Tigers are in a good spot to be laying big numbers this week. It's kind of that week in the SEC where everybody's taking some time off, except for Georgia, Kentucky, and hopefully Georgia takes a half off against Kentucky.
Well, it wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't mention our good friend the Bear, because he's on UAB. So there you go.
Yep.
Not a play by us, but the Bear is on UAB. Final one, big boys, big spreads. Oh, God. I might hold my nose here. I might take the 31 with Colorado against Washington. Washington coming off of a massive victory. They look tremendous in doing so. They're up to 17th in the polls. And now you got to play Colorado, who's a disaster. By the way, cash the under on their season win total. Thank you very much, Colorado. Could I intrigue you in the Buffs, plus 31 up in Seattle on Saturday night?
I'm not going to argue against it, but it's not a play for me at this point.
Not an official play.
I think it is. It's a good spot to bet the Buffs if you think they're going to show up as a motivated team.
And by the way,
I thought it was Bush League what Lincoln Riley did to Colorado last week, and
I agree.
I'm one of the last to ever whine about running up to score, because I always say, don't complain about it. Stop them. If you don't like it, stop them. But it's one thing to run up to score against a rival. If you want to run up to score against USC, kind of like UCLA did, hell yeah, you should do that every chance you get. Programs you recruit against, why not? Run it up. I don't have any problem with that. But you're trying to beat up and embarrass 1-8 Colorado. There's no need for that. And I think hopefully karma comes back to bite Lincoln Riley this week.
I tend to agree. 48-17 last week. I did not have Colorado. I do know some people who did, and they were not pleased with that decision.
He ran a hurry-up tempo to try to score in the final 30 seconds. That was weak.
I agree. Totally agree. All right, let's wrap it up with a little off the radar. All right. This line is comical to me. Army, God bless our troops, has scored 16 total points the last 2 weeks, Matt. And they're laying 10 this week against mighty UConn, who was an official play last week. Should have taken them on the money line. UConn, by the way, now 9-2 ATS. They stormed the field last week there at the Rent. They are bowl eligible for the first time in 7 years. Jim Mora is a magic man. And now you got to figure out a way to defend the triple option.
Yeah.
I'm taking Army. -10. It's a lot of points. I know this is not a vintage Army team. They're only 3-6. They have one win over an FBS opponent. So this could come back next week. We'll talk about it and say, what was I thinking? But I'm taking 10. I laid the 10 with Army. So I'm taking Navy and Army this week. Another game that's just curious.
You know what? I'll say this. That's one of those lines you look at and you say, why in the hell is Army 10? Well, it's either lay it or stay away from it.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Jim Mora Jr. has done a great job, too. 3 years ago, he was a candidate. He wanted the UNLV job, desperately wanted the UNLV job. He was out of coaching. And I thought he would have been a great hire for the Rebels. Well, he's proving at UConn that he would have been a great hire as UNLV struggles under Arroyo, who's not a very strong coach at all. Nice job by Mora, because when you can go to those dead spots in college football, like Kansas and UConn, and build a winner that fast, that's a proof of a really good coach.
I totally agree. And I know some Tennessee fans were giving me crap when I tweeted out there's no debate that Jim Mora Jr. is the coach of the year. I'm like,
oh, good job. Think about how
they've
bad.
Won 3 games over the last 4 years.
Terrible the last 3 years.
And they beat, I know Jake Haener didn't play. They beat Fresno State, and they beat a top 25 Liberty team. That's incredible. And they're going to a bowl game, hopefully, because they have no bowl tie. We don't have to get into that.
You know, you mentioned that. My biggest regret from the college football season is not playing UConn and the points in that game against Fresno. I looked at that all week and said, how the hell can Fresno be laying 24 on the road without Jake Haener? Lost the game outright, and I didn't bet it, and that still bothers me today.
That's the Matt I know and love right there. All right, a couple more games before we give you our best bet recap. I go back and forth on this one. I don't know why. I just keep looking at this game intrigued. Western Kentucky's a good team. They're playing Auburn. Auburn was one of my best bets last week. They beat Texas A&M. I think Auburn really, really wants Cadillac Williams, the players do, to be their head coach. Yep. They're laying 5.5 here. Yes, it's a look-ahead spot to Alabama. There's no doubt. But I think there's some momentum down there, at least from the players, to try to keep Cadillac Williams, a legend, a guy they clearly love. I haven't got to the window yet. It's not an official play, but I really am intrigued by laying the 5.5 with Auburn here against Western Kentucky, who is very good, a good CUSA team. I don't think they're going back to the CUSA championship game this year because of tie-break situations, but I might end up playing Auburn here in this spot.
You know, I loved Auburn last week. It was one of my favorite plays. Yep. And the game got a little bit
it's not pretty.
Too close for comfort at the end. Let's put it that way. I had to sweat it. But Auburn got there. That was the bottom line. And gets the first win for Cadillac Williams. I really like the combination of Robbie Ashford, the freshman dual-threat quarterback, and Tank Bigsby. And I think the Auburn defense is stepping up, playing much better. But this is not a really good spot to be playing. It's not like last week's spot. Let's put it this way. You step out of conference, the players are probably relaxed because you got that win for Cadillac that you wanted to get.
And you're fired up next week. Let's go beat Alabama.
Right, you got Bama on deck. So it's the spot is going to keep me off the game. Let me ask you this real quick, because I said a week ago I think Cadillac's going to stay on the staff and Deion Sanders is going to be the next Auburn coach. I believe that's what's going to happen.
I think Lane Kiffin's going to be their coach.
You know, if I were Kiffin, I would just shoot for a different job. Why do you want to be in the same state with Nick Saban? There's a lot better jobs.
He likes pain, apparently. That's my guess. I think Deion and Cadillac together, my Lord. Imagine the recruits they'd be able to pull in there.
I think Auburn's making a mistake if you don't hire Deion Sanders. Anyway.
The buzz they would get.
Can Deion bring his son to quarterback?
Yeah.
Because Shedeur Sanders could be Auburn's quarterback next year, right?
He's a true sophomore, I believe, and he was a big time recruit.
Big time. He's going to be an NFL prospect.
Absolutely.
I like Robbie Ashford a lot. I think he can develop into a big time quarterback. But you wonder if they do bring in Deion, he's got to bring his son as quarterback anyway. A lot of interesting things to talk about with Auburn. I'd also think the Tigers just going to be a little bit distracted this week. They got the win they wanted a week ago. It's a non-conference game, and Bama's on deck.
All right, 2 Mountain West games to wrap it up. I'm going to start here, 9:45 Eastern, 7:45 up in the mountains of Logan, Utah. A team that you faded last week. Give me the Aggies of Utah State here. They did not play very well against Hawaii. Hawaii probably should have won that game outright, but got to the window there for you. That's all that matters. San Jose State, they dealt with, tragedy, losing a teammate, and it just feels like something's amiss there. They struggled to beat Nevada. They got absolutely blasted last week, so you could argue I'm betting against a team that is low, which is fair. Their quarterback, Chevin Cadero, is from Hawaii.
He sure is.
It's going to be 8 degrees in Logan, Utah. Think they're going to be fired up to play this game. Also, bowl eligibility on the line for Utah State. Next week, they play Boise State on the road. Not to say that they think that's going to be a loss, but this is the final home game of the season there for Utah State. You've seen line movement here. Take a short money line price. I think you can find it around minus 105. They're a short 1-point underdog. I think Utah State gets it done here. Late night, frigidly cold. Just feels like Brett Brennan's squad is starting to lose some steam here down the stretch.
Did you say it's going to be as cold as an angry wife in Logan, Utah?
I don't know. What?
You said cold as hell.
Oh, I said it again. It's one of those things where you get trapped. It's going to be very cold. How about that? All right.
I actually kind of like the angle there. And Chevin Cordero he went to Honolulu High School. He got out because of the Todd Graham situation in Hawaii. I think that's a decent spot. This Utah State team is very pedestrian, and that's why I didn't agree with the number last week as an 11-point favorite against Hawaii. By the way, in that game, Hawaii had 541 total yards. Utah State had 374, and it was 4-0. Hawaii turned it over 4 times and still was at the goal line at the end of the game. Lost that 41-34, but covered. I kind of agree with your angle on that one.
All right, final one. Wouldn't be our podcast if we didn't go out to the island if there was a game. UNLV at Hawaii, 4-6 UNLV. I believe they've lost 4 in a row?
5 in a row. They were 4-1, now 4-6.
UNLV at Hawaii. Wrap it up the right way, Matt Humans. UNLV at Hawaii. The Rainbow Warriors at Circa right now catching 11.5.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because last night Circa ticked up to 12 on this number, and I wasn't sure why, and it's back to 11.5 today. I'd like to know who bet that to bump that number up a half point to 12. I don't know why you'd be laying the points with the Rebels here. They're 3-9 against the spread as double-digit favorites in the last 20 years. The only 2 times they've been double-digit favorites on the road in the last 20 years, they lost both games straight up. Also, the Hawaii offense is really starting to kick things into gear. Like I said, 541 yards last week. Braden Schrager played better. He threw for 306 and 2 TDs. He did throw 3 picks, including a pick 6 late in the game that I thought was going to blow the cover. But Parson and Hines at the running back position, those guys really picked it up. They had 200 yards on the ground a week ago. Since Doug Brumfield's come back at quarterback for the Rebels, he has not really been that sharp. This is still a Hawaii team that was a 24-point dog at San Diego State and should have won the game, lost by 2. Timmy Ching's 5-1 against the spread since the beginning of October. UNLV's dropped 5 in a row. Give me the points. I didn't think this was going to be a double-digit favorite this week, and I think Hawaii's live to win the game, so I'll take the 11.5.
All right, let's get to it. Our best bet recap. Mr. Humans coming off a 6-1 week.
You had a fine week yourself, buddy.
I did, but yours was better. Rattle them off. Official plays here.
All right, we're going Illinois plus 18. Northwestern plus 19.5. Kansas plus 9. UCLA plus 3. That's the number at Circa Sports right now. And Hawaii plus 11.5. And I've got a lot of leans on this card, Tim, but those are the only 5 official plays for right now.
Got a bunch of leans myself, but here are the official ones. Baylor +3 against TCU. What could go wrong? Navy +16.5. Maybe it gets to 17. I don't think so, but we'll roll with the mids +16.5. Arkansas, if you can find a 3, take it. I'll take the 2.5. I think they win outright. Army -10. That line makes no sense. And Utah State on the money line. A bunch of leans for me. I like UCLA like you do. I like Illinois. But we'll go 5 and 5. 5 for each, and that'll do it. Stay tuned on Twitter. We'll give you the update. I believe we're only going to do one podcast next week. We're going to combine the Tuesday morning and the Thursday podcast. So stick with us. We'll give you what you need for rivalry week, no doubt about it. But for Matt Humans, at Matt Humans 247, I'm Tim Murray. Make sure you tell a friend, tell lots of friends about the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. We'll talk to you next week.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN Sports Betting Podcasts.